Finally, somebody had the bright idea to look inside the decorative rock formations resting at the very bottom of the tank.
And because it doesn't have a central brain, when prey is detected, the creature isn't making a conscious cognitive decision to attack. So the crucial takeaway here is that this creature literally rewires the entire reef ecosystem.
It really highlights the ultimate deception of the tropical ocean floor. We are dealing with two completely different worlds here.
Okay, picture it. You are snorkeling. Above the sand, everything is perfectly tranquil. Right at the surface, perfectly camouflaged is grains of sand. Well, it turns out the bobbit worm relies on a highly sophisticated early warning system. But if you think about it, if they can wreak this much havoc inside a secure glass box, and then, in a fraction of a second, an explosive eruption. The iridescent body launches upward faster than you can even blink.
But cut to what is below. Beneath that exact same pristine sand.
Now, it's really important to recognize that when we say siphonophore, we aren't just talking about one specific giant creature.
Now, if you're an aquarium worker, just finding the worm is only half the battle. Because of its massive length and the crazy traction it has inside its burrow.
Unfortunately, I have some bad news. That is definitely not the case.
So, they fundamentally divide the labor of survival. You've got some zooids dedicated entirely to swimming, others exclusively designed for feeding, some for defense, and others solely for reproduction. The whole mystery kicked off with a really simple yet highly alarming symptom. Fish were just disappearing.
And that brings us to a fundamental difference we really need to wrap our heads around. Think about a regular animal for a second, right? Like a fish, or even us. Yet, despite that massive size, these organisms are breathtakingly delicate. Just look at their structural makeup, or really the total lack of it.
The answer all comes down to scale. While we haven't actually observed them spawning in the wild, we do know that the early juvenile stages of the bobbit worm are completely microscopic. Which brings us to arguably the most unsettling part of this explainer, the invisible invasion. A staff member shifted a rock, and boom, they spot the front end of a worm. So they pull it, and it resists. So they pull more, and it just keeps going. It's like a magic trick that won't end.
What happens next is just a terrifying hardwired reflex. Once those 5 sensory antennae confirm a target is within striking range, research has shown that fish species which normally hang out and forage on the sandy ocean floor will completely change their behavior if they detect bobbit worm antennae in the area.
Above the sand, you've got this idyllic scene, right? It's featureless, peaceful, filled with colorful fish, zero visible threats anywhere.
Beautiful, colorful fish swim lazily by. The pristine white sand looks smooth, featureless, completely inviting. 5 independent antennae are twitching. They're actively sampling the water. Right at the very tip of its head, it has 5 sensory antennae that sit perfectly flush with the sand, so they are totally indistinguishable from the surrounding grains.
What are they doing out in the open ocean? Well, in natural reef environments, the bobbit worm's impact goes way beyond just the individual fish it happens to catch.
The massive chitinous blades expand, snap shut with absolute bone-crushing force, and violently drag the prey straight into the depths.
Is an invisible network of massive, 10-foot-long ambush predators. They are coiled in their mucus-lined tunnels.
The term actually covers a beautifully diverse group of elegant forms. And the diversity out there is immense. They aren't just one shape. They've adapted into these incredible spiral colonies that twist gracefully.
Trying to just grab it and pull it out is a terrible idea. Pulling it often snaps the worm right in half. And then, both halves retreat deep into different parts of the substrate. So yeah, you've just made your monster problem twice as bad.
The monster beneath the sand isn't some rare, elusive species. It's not a deep-sea specialist that you'll never cross paths with.
They act so much like specialized roles in a human society, all working together to keep the living system alive. Which, prompts a pretty profound question. And I don't mean they were fighting them sick on the tank floor. They weren't showing any signs of disease or distress during the day either. We're talking about healthy, vibrant fish.
We rely on independent internal organs, a heart, lungs, a stomach, all safely housed inside one single body to survive. Well, a siphonophore colony completely flips that concept upside down.
0 bones, 0 armor, 0 powerful jaws.
As you descend further into this immense blackwater environment, it becomes super clear that survival down here doesn't look anything like survival on land.
They are so incredibly tiny that they can pass right through standard aquarium intake filters without a problem, drifting in the water just like plankton. I mean, how does a predator that can grow to 10 feet long and literally snap fish in half? They actually had to call over other staff members to literally excavate the tank floor. By the time they fully pulled this creature out of the sand, it measured a massive 4 feet long. It had been living right under their noses the entire time.
It unleashes a biological cutting device that strikes from complete concealment.
They'll actively abandon those sandy areas and crowd themselves into the coral structures instead. A single invisible worm buried in the sand can force an entire fish community to reorganize itself across a massive area, purely through the psychological threat of it just being there.
But look directly below that pristine sand. You have a highly complex network of mucus-lined tunnels housing a massive coiled body with scissor-like jaws just sitting there, waiting.
It is your picture-perfect tropical reef, feeling the microscopic pressure wave of a fish swimming carelessly just 2 feet above. The trap is set. And each one of these acts as an independent sensory channel. They can detect chemical gradients, slight changes in water pressure, and even tiny substrate vibrations. Together, they monitor about a 1-meter detection radius. And remember, the worm processes all this incredibly complex data without a brain, just a simple nerve ring. It can literally tell the difference between a random water current and the pressure wave of a small fish swimming 2 feet above it.
It actually engages in a form of environmental, psychological warfare.
And then, perfect stillness. The sand settles. The fish is just gone.
Crisscrossing the entire visible area, just waiting in the dark.
Long, thread-like colonies stretching out into the abyss, surprisingly compact floating forms, and even brilliantly colored deep-sea species. They have completely mastered this hostile environment by evolving into an absolute array of stunning shapes.
The only real solution is a complete, totally exhausting excavation of the entire tank floor.
And it certainly isn't restricted to untouched reefs hundreds of miles from human civilization.
If no single part can survive entirely alone, what exactly is the animal here? Is it the individual parts or the entire interconnected colony, simply vanishing into thin air, or, well, thin water, between closing time at night and opening time the very next morning?
It relies on entirely interconnected, identical external units that physically assemble themselves to create the larger structure. It's just a wildly unique evolutionary strategy that completely redefines what we even think of as an individual. For the siphonophore, thriving depends entirely on delicate specialization, hyper-efficient predation, and unified cooperation rather than just brute physical strength.
So, when aquariums buy what's called live rock and live sand from tropical reefs to balance their artificial ecosystems, they are sometimes unknowingly importing these microscopic juvenile monsters, completely invisible to the naked eye, managed to sneak into highly secure closed marine aquariums in the first place.
Now you might be thinking they figured this out in a few days. No. This highly stressful, incredibly frustrating ordeal dragged on for a grueling 4 months. 4 entire months where this invisible thief systematically picked off the aquarium's prized fish, operating literally just a few feet away from the staff every single working day. Nobody saw it arrive, and absolutely nobody saw it hunt.
Okay, get ready for this because this stat should absolutely blow your mind. While the worm they pulled out of that aquarium in Nuke was 4 feet long, the maximum documented length of the bobbit worm is a staggering 3 meters. That's 10 feet. Just think about that for a second. When fully extended, this animal is significantly taller than a human adult. And an animal that massive lives its entire life completely invisible from above.
And that 4'1" they found? That's just the beginning. At their maximum documented size, these monsters can reach a terrifying 10 feet, that's 3 meters in length, and they can be several centimeters thick. Think about that. That's probably taller than the ceiling in the room you're sitting in right now. Yet, despite this massive bulk, you'll never actually see the whole animal in the wild. It keeps its entire body coiled vertically inside a mucus-lined tunnel that it meticulously digs and maintains beneath the sandy ocean floor, sometimes just chilling in that exact same spot for years.
Okay. Let's dive into this bizarre investigation, because the aquarium staff were, frankly, totally stumped. They went through all the standard protocols. They checked the filtration system for any kind of blockages. They painstakingly combed over the entire tank structure, looking for hidden gaps where a fish might have slipped out. They even ran rigorous tests on the water chemistry. And guess what? Everything was perfect. Absolutely nothing was wrong. But despite that, fish just kept disappearing, night after night.